We know the kings and queens of Europe. We hear their names in tales of conquest and courtly drama. But what if I told you that kings may have ruled parts of America long before the first European colonists arrived? From forgotten legends to powerful indigenous empires, today we uncover what many history books often leave out: the story of America's lost kingdoms. 1. Legend of Prince Madoc. Back in the 12th century, Welsh legend introduces us to Prince Madoc ab Owain Gwynedd, a younger son of the King of Gwynedd, who, according to stories, escaped the brutal family feud that followed his father's death in 1169. One 15th century poem describes how Madoc sailed west in 2 ships. Later accounts even suggest a fleet of 10, landing around 1170 in what is now Mobile Bay, Alabama. Local lore recounts that he left behind stone forts near Mobile and on Lookout Mountain, fortifications said to resemble medieval Welsh castles, and even Cherokee traditions describing white people builders. Some tales speak of his party intermarrying with native peoples, the so-called Welsh Indians, whom early explorers claimed even spoke a version of Welsh. These legends captured imaginations so strongly that figures like Governor John Sevier in 1810 wrote of finding brass-armored skeletons with Welsh insignia. But here's the truth. Despite centuries of captivating storytelling and colonial-era speculation, including Queen Elizabeth's use of the tale to support early English claims in the Americas, definitive archaeological evidence confirms that Madoc or his people ever landed in North America. Still, this legend endured, and it reminds us how myths can influence our understanding of history. 2. Indigenous kingdoms and empires. Beyond myths and romance, North America once hosted truly remarkable urban centers and complex political systems. Let's begin with Cahokia, near present-day St. Louis, which, from 1050 to 1350 CE, grew into a metropolis of 10,000 to 20,000 residents, spread across an astonishing 6 square miles, with more than 120 earthen mounds, including Monk's Mound, standing over 30 meters tall. Imagine coordinated labor, moving millions of cubic feet of earth, creating plazas the size of 35 football fields, aligned wood post circles marking seasons, and workshops crafting copper ornaments, clear signs of elite rule, religious ceremonies, and civic infrastructure. Shifting northeast, we encounter the Haudenosaunee, or Iroquois Confederacy, a federation forged between the 12th and 17th centuries under the Great Law of Peace. Power was shared. Clan mothers, through matrilineal bonds, selected chiefs who then represented 5 and later 6 nations in a grand council of 50 sachems and 49 clan mothers. Decisions on war, diplomacy, or treaties required consensus, a system admired by Benjamin Franklin, who referenced it in his Albany Plan of 1754, noting that if 6 nations of ignorant savages could unite, so could the English colonies. Ceremonial symbols like the Tree of Peace and clusters of arrows reflected unity, a model that influenced early American federalism. These were not primitive societies. From Cahokia's city planning and monumental mounds to the Iroquois Confederacy's constitutionally guided governance, these civilizations were structured, strategic, and sovereign, and they shaped political ideas that resonated long after European contact. 3. What happened to these kingdoms? When Europeans arrived, these once powerful societies faced catastrophic upheaval. Cahokia, for example, had already begun to decline by 1250 to 1300 CE due to environmental pressures like flooding, drought, soil erosion, and the strain of a dense population. By 1350, the city was abandoned, leaving its grand plazas and mounds to the elements. Later, Contact brought smallpox and other old-world diseases, alongside conflicts and forced displacement, that decimated indigenous populations across North America, contributing to 25 to 80% death rates in some regions. The central institutions of Cahokia's elite society vanished, and its stoneworks and plazas faded into memory. In contrast, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy endured into colonial times. They skillfully managed shifting alliances, entered the covenant chain of treaties with the British in the 17th century, negotiated land boundaries at Fort Stanwix in 1768, and after the American Revolution, signed the Treaty of Fort Stanwix, 1784, ceding lands west of the Ohio River, though not without protest and controversy. Despite internal divisions during the Revolution, some nations sided with the British, others with the Americans, the Confederacy survived, continuing to negotiate land terms, including the Treaty of Canandaigua in 1794, which affirmed their remaining land rights. Yet, American expansion in the 19th century steadily eroded their authority. They were often treated as secondary governments, and subsequent treaties forced further land cessions and relocation. Still, the Grand Council survives today, and many Haudenosaunee nations retain cultural sovereignty and land rights. In short, while many indigenous kingdoms were shattered by disease, war, and displacement, some adapted and endured, leaving legacies visible in ruins, oral narratives, and enduring governance structures that continue to inspire sovereignty today. History is written by the victors, but uncovered by the curious. What other kingdoms lie buried beneath the surface of time? In our next episode, we journey across the Atlantic to meet one of Europe's most feared rulers. Stay tuned for the dark legacy of King Edward I. Until then, like, share, and subscribe to Kingdoms and Colonies Uncovered.